Political ideologies and the spectrum. A political ideology is essentially a vision for what government should be, what it should do, and what ultimate goals it ought to serve. Throughout history, these visions have often been organized along what we call a political spectrum. At its simplest, this spectrum stretches from left to right. On the left are those who emphasize equality and want government to play an active role in shaping both society and the economy. On the right are those who prefer less government involvement, accept social and economic inequalities as part of life, and highlight personal freedom and responsibility. At the far edges of this spectrum, we find two extremes. On the far left stands communism. On the far right stands fascism. Both of these philosophies have historically taken authoritarian forms, with governments that demand near total control. By contrast, democratic systems tend to function best in the center, where there is a balance of government involvement and individual liberty. Communism is not only a political theory, but also an economic model. In its ideal form, it abolishes private property and eliminates class distinctions. All workers are meant to be equal, regardless of their job or productivity. The state manages the economy and provides education, housing, healthcare, and employment for everyone. While this vision of equality appeals to many, in practice, communist governments have often struggled to sustain freedom or prosperity. Less radical than communism, but still on the left, is liberalism. Liberals believe government has a duty not only to protect individual rights, but also to intervene when unchecked markets create harmful outcomes. They argue that unregulated capitalism can lead to exploitation of workers, environmental damage, and unfair concentrations of wealth and power. To prevent this, liberals advocate government regulation of business and support programs such as welfare, unemployment insurance, and subsidies to help those who fall behind. Moving across the spectrum, conservatism places a greater emphasis on stability, order, and tradition. Conservatives generally support limiting the role of government in the economy, believing that private enterprise and free markets are the best engines of prosperity. They often resist large government programs, preferring social institutions like families, churches, and communities to provide support rather than the state. In the conservative view, government should protect society and preserve long-standing cultural values, not engineer radical social change. At the far right, fascism presents a starkly different vision. Fascists promote nationalism, hierarchy, and absolute loyalty to the state. They exalt military strength and suppress political opposition. Fascism rejects democracy in favor of centralized power, often embodied in a charismatic leader. Figures like Benito Mussolini in Italy and Adolf Hitler in Germany rose to power on fascist ideologies, using propaganda, violence, and national pride to consolidate control. In practice, most democracies operate somewhere in between these extremes, and the level of government involvement varies from country to country. Sweden, for instance, taxes its citizens heavily, but uses those revenues to provide free healthcare, free education, retirement pensions, and strong social safety nets. The United States, by comparison, maintains lower taxes and smaller welfare programs, emphasizing private solutions to social needs. Both systems are democratic, yet they reflect different ideological balances between freedom, equality, and government responsibility. Still, describing ideology as a simple left-right line can be misleading. Many individuals do not fit neatly into one category. Someone may favor government involvement in one issue, but oppose it in another. In the United States, this is especially visible in debates over socio-cultural matters. For example, an individual may strongly defend gun rights, which aligns with conservative ideas about personal liberty, but at the same time support government restrictions on abortion, which limits individual choice. Others may hold the reverse view, calling for stricter gun control but defending abortion rights. These kinds of cross-pressures show that people's beliefs cannot always be captured on a single spectrum. Because of this complexity, political scientists sometimes use a more sophisticated model, an ideological matrix, that measures views across multiple dimensions. This framework allows us to see how someone might lean liberal in economic matters, while leaning conservative in social or cultural matters, or vice versa. Another dimension to consider is populism. Populism is less about where you fall on the left-right spectrum and more about who you think politics should serve. Populist movements frame politics as a struggle between the people and the elites. Populism can be found on both the left and the right. On the right in the United States, we saw it in Pat Buchanan's campaign in the 1990s and later in the Tea Party movement, which emphasized limited government, reduced taxes, and stricter immigration controls. On the left, populism fueled the Occupy Wall Street protests in 2011, which criticized economic inequality and the cozy relationship between politicians and large corporations. Finally, there is libertarianism, a philosophy that cuts across the traditional spectrum by placing the highest value on individual liberty. Libertarians advocate for minimal government intervention in both economic and personal matters. Economically, they want low taxes and little regulation. Socially, they support freedom of choice, including policies like same-sex marriage and drug legalization. In this way, libertarianism borrows from both sides of the spectrum, conservative on economics, liberal on social issues, yet stands apart as its own distinct worldview. All of this shows us that while the left-right spectrum is a useful starting point for understanding ideology, it is far from complete. People's beliefs are shaped by culture, religion, region, education, and personal experience, and those beliefs often span multiple ideological traditions. Political ideology, then, is not just a theory of government. It is a complex web of values, trade-offs, and visions for how society should function. And that complexity is exactly what makes the study of politics so compelling.